Hello and welcome back. Hair is a big part of the character design. You can change whole look of the character. But creating hair is not an easy task. There are some artists who devote all their career on just making hair. So you shouldn't feel too bad if you're struggling while creating them. For making your journey of creating hair a bit easier for you, I chose to demonstrate 6 most common ways of creating hair in Blender. I will slowly go through each one of them and try to give you positives and negatives about using one technique over another. Curves in Blender is one of the best ways of making stylized hair. It's very easy to change hair position and it lets you always change the hair shape. For creating hair curves, all you have to do is press Shift A to get an add menu, and in the curve options choose path. Now press Shift A again, and then the curve options choose circle. Now you have to select your path again, and in a path curve options scroll down to geometry, and in a bevel just select object and select your circle. At this point you can keep playing with the circle shape whichever way you want. You can scale, you can drag. If you don't want to be bound by curve moving options, you can select one curve side on all the curve sides and just press V. This way you can choose the changing options. You can even choose 3. This way you will have no bounds on how you can move the handles. But if you have a really difficult shape you want to create, you can always make your own shape by pressing Shift A. In the add options in a mesh, you can add plane. Now by pressing tab, you can go into edit mode. By pressing M, you can merge every single vertices at the center and you have only one vertex now. By pressing E, which is shortcut for extrusion, and just keep pressing E, I can extrude any shape I want. Now, when I'm happy with my shape, I have to select the 2 ends and press F to fill in the loop. Now, I press tab to go back into object mode, and in an object, at the convert to, I just choose curve. Now, this way I will be able to use this as a curve. By selecting a path, I can deselect the last object and select the new one. This way I can create any type of shape which I want. Now, if you don't know how to move your path, it's very easy. Just select your path, press tab to go into edit mode or change it here. And by selecting one or selecting few and pressing G, you can move them. A few shortcuts you should know is by selecting any of them, you can press Alt S and move your mouse to scale it. As well as you can use Ctrl T for twist. And spinning your mouse around. You can select view. And have a twisted here. Again, Alt S to scale and just move your hair in a position. You can also press E to extrude. Again, if these ones are too small, Alt S, and I will scale them bigger. And this is how you control your path. Particle hair. It's one of the best ways of creating realistic hair in the Blender. It's easy to use, easy to set up, but there's a lot of options which can make you confused. Particle hair is not usable for games, but it's perfect choice for making realistic hair for just rendering. It's also been used in some of Blender animations. For creating particle here, firstly you will need a base. So I just retopologized the top of my head to get this type of shape where I can set up my particle here. So by having my base selected, I'll go into particle options and add a new one. And on here I can choose hair. Now, most of the useful choices in this is hair length, random, steps, children. I usually like to use simple because simple follows one strand and interpolate just tries to fill out the gap between your particles. So as you can see, we now have 1000 of them. So if I have just 2, interpolate will try to fill up the gap. But if I use the simple one will just follow them. That's why you have a little bit more control by using simple ones. Now, by creating the simple particle, all you have to do is add more if your computer can handle, so you can see how it will look in the render. I usually like to add 4 or 5 steps, depending again for your machine. Add a little bit of clamping. You can even use the clamp curve. If I'm using a clamp curve, I would create something similar to shape like this, which is pretty smooth. Now, your children will follow this radius. So if you want them not to spread so much, you can lower the value. But usually the default value is pretty good, depending of this object scale you're working on. To get a different length in your strand, you will have to use this in the path trimming random in the render options. I just change it a little bit, not too much, to get a different distance length in the particles. Now at the bottom there's a roughness, and in the roughness you can add just a little bit more variation to your hair. I don't really go too much over these options. I add only a little bit of them. You can even change the size if you want. This way I get more iterations, more differences in the hair. As well as I can add a kink type. I usually use one of them and just have an amplitude very lowly, as well as frequency. This way they will have a bit more variation, but it will not break the whole hair shape. And now I can start setting up my hair. I usually only care about the length, and I don't care about the numbers because I'm going to add them on my own. What I do now is have my base still selected and go into menu where I can start particle edit. I will delete all of them if there is any, and at the add options I'll press N to open the side menu. Let me just turn on the screencast keys if you cannot see. N is for side menu. And in the tools I will change my count to 1. I don't care a lot about segments or anything. In here, only preserve strand length and preserve root position. I can as well use mirror by selecting X. If you're working on a side here, having mirror is fine. As well as the path steps. And by this stick, you can see children or not see them. So I would just add, let me delete these ones. I would add a strand. Let's start from the front. And I will use a comb. Now you can use that flicked emitter. An emitter is your base, so it means it will never go under your emitter. Now, if it's too long, you can use two things. One is cut. It will cut to your radius, or you can use length. Clicking it simple will make it bigger. And by having it on shrink, you can shrink it. I usually choose them on particular reasons and not use always one or another. So now when you come, as well have this one and options of seeing my paths. And now by pressing children, I can see how it's going to look. If your hair appears very flat on the side, you can add some roughness. Now, nothing has changed, because when you're in a particle editor, you have to reset your children. And you will see the changes happening. Now, I wouldn't go too overboard with the roundness, and just add a little bit of it. Now I can just keep adding more here and getting them in the position. Another thing is you'll always adjust every single hair. What you can do is hover over one hair and press L, and it will have it selected. You can have few hairs selected. By pressing Alt A, I can deselect, or A, select everything. As well, I can press L and H to hide. Now I will be able to others and see this one, but I won't be able to move them. So you can hide which ones you don't want to move and just move one or a few at a time. Creating hair cards is not an easy task. For creating them, we'll use two of the things we already learned. We'll utilize the curve options and the particle options. So what I do first is delete everything. I will add a plane. Let me have my screencast keys on. And I will go into edit, new, and scale it down, as well as dragging it up. Now I'll add a particle and create a hair again. Now utilize all the options which we learned before. I would add from 5 to 10 different strands. And now I will just use all the options I already used in the previous video where I was creating particle hair. What I want to do is flip my hair around. So I will go into edit mode, press R to rotate, and E on E axis and 180 degree. Now my hair will be pointing down. I will go into the front view. And now I have to create a camera. So I'll do just that. I will try setting up my camera in the place. And for rendering the texture, I would have my resolution on the resolution I want to have my texture on. Go into the camera view, as well as use orthographic, and pull the camera closer. By pressing N, I can have camera to the view. So I will adjust it and have it as close as possible. Again, in the rendering options, I'll make a background transparent. As well as now we will have to create two materials. One material will be for the base and another one will be for hair. So let me create two materials. First one will be base. and the second one will be here. For a base, all we will need is transparency. Make sure the white is at the maximum, so it will be completely invisible. And in here, I will just add principle here. Now, direct coloring, I can make any color I want. And in melanin, I can use natural colors. But for this one, I'll use just direct coloring. You can change all these options the way you want. And make the hair color which you want. Just for a test, let's make it purplish blue. And now, in the particle options, in the render, set your hair material to here. As well, principle here shader can only be rendered in cycles, so let's change it to cycles. Go back from the camera view, and we will need to add few of the lights. I like area lights. Set them up into the position. I usually use quite a few of area lights just to make lighting not too flat. Now, my hair is not very visible, so I will add way much more lighting. You can even add a color in your lighting if you want, but it can change the color of your hair a little bit, so be careful with how much color you're adding to it. Then I will duplicate my light a few times. And go into the camera view just to see how my hair are looking. At this point, I can just render. Before you're rendering, it's good to use denoising. Press render and open image denoise. Now, just render your image. When our image is finally rendered, now it's time to set it up. I showed you all the ways how you can create the shape for your path. You can also use this extrude option on the path, but I will do another path. Curve path. Move this path a bit higher. Delete two sides because I only need 3 vertices. Move this one a bit higher and lower its resolution. 2, 3. Now select other path and object. As well, this is way too big, so I will scale it down. And it's time to get a material for your path. What I will do is import the image texture. And for the next step, in the edit options preference in the add-on, tick on Node Wrangler. And by having Node Wrangler on, now I press Ctrl T on the image. And we'll get this options with texture coordinate and mapping. Another thing we have to set up is alpha in the alpha. And now just open your texture which we rendered. I can see that it's not looking too great right now. So what I'm gonna do is try play with the rotation. This one doesn't put it, and Z-axis seems like it got it in our place. Now, another thing we will have to set it up is at the bottom of the materials. You have to change blend modes and grip shadow modes. And at this point, I can see that there's something wrong with the scale. Let's start playing with the scale. This scale seems like it's not changing anything. Looks like E scale, and let's see if the position, yep, it is a position. So let's now manually input the numbers slowly. I think that the scale is a bit too big. So we will lower it and manually input the numbers. Maybe 6 actually going to work. And it is. As well as I can see my X scale, I believe, is too small. So I will make it higher and move it on E axis. I think my scale is a bit too much now. And I'll input the manual number again. And now my texture seems to be looking quite nice. And now I can freely move and create hair. Modeling hair is a very slow and difficult task. Most of stylized game models their hair. This way they can save up on their resources by making hair in a minimum vertice count as possible. Modeling hair can go very advanced and every single strand can be connected together, creating very complex shape. Now, I can't really teach you how to make it because it's simple modeling, but I can definitely show you how I do it. So what I do is just create any object, then I go into edit mode and delete it. Then I use a magnet tool to attract to my mesh and form the hair shape which I want. Then I will fill in the faces and extrude. Then I just add the subdivision and move my hair into the place, as well as shape it. Sculpting hair can be useful only in few ways. First, if you're creating figurines, you probably will still need to sculpt your hair for 3D printing. But even in these cases, sometimes curves are still better. Sculpting can be slow and a bit hard, but it's perfect choice for creating a base shape for your hair, which you can follow later with your modeling or curves. If you know how to sculpt, you already can try and sculpt hair. But before you do, I would like to give you a few advices. So let's start with these tips. First tip would be, don't forget that the hair is influenced by gravity. What I mean by that, the hair will drop down to the ground as a gravity. And I see some people having hair like this. It doesn't really make sense to have hair floating, or they have to be sprayed, or this is your choice. But usually hair is dragged down by a gravity. Another thing, people always like to add a lot of small strands to hair like this, making many separate strands. And I don't really recommend doing this at all. It makes hair look very weird and you're just wasting time. It looks incomplete, it looks weird. If you really want to have some more details on your hair, I would rather add way less than this. Okay, I can't even go back anymore, so I'm gonna smooth it. And what I would do, I would use clay strips and add quite large strip, even larger than this. And you can smooth, crease the side, and have this smaller details, but they aren't really that small. They still hold the shape of the hair and it looks more natural, because hair is not really that separated. If we look closer at it, it is in chunks. So I would rather have these bigger chunks. I can smooth, and it looks way more natural and better. Now, if you can add those strips too in the front, but what I would do is not add them like this. What I would do is go slowly. You can even turn off the symmetry. I would go over one strip very slowly, and I would even change the bottom because it changes whole shape. Maybe hide the face and get this deeper and actually influence the shape. Now I can crease it. And this way it makes much more sense than just having lines. You can have smaller ones, and this way this one makes way more sense than just having lines like this. Okay, because then it's actually a separation. Or just add some here where it changes your form. A bit to the top going. I wouldn't even go this much detailed. And this way I can see the base, but it's not destroyed by a very small thousands of strokes. Trying to comprehend every single hair, it just looks weird and it doesn't work. Now I can't really say a lot about Blender add-ons on hair because I never used it, but I've definitely seen many great things created with it, and if you're very interested, you can check by just writing in YouTube Blender hair add-ons, but I know they do cost some money. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please join my Discord and write it in there. I hope you liked the video, and see you next time.